Here we are, part 2, Punting Melbourne style at the Emerald.
At the Emerald, yeah, great pub.
Race-free Mondays. Yeah, I'll have a beer, Paddy. Race-free Mondays. Get into it.
Got a few blokes coming for lunch.
That's it, you bet.
A few scully works.
So, DK, really interesting meeting at Moonee Valley on Saturday, and I thought there's some things that we can discuss there about that meeting that'll lead us into a broader discussion, and you'll have examples from races that you've been in recently that'll hopefully be interesting to the viewers. So the first thing is how the track played. So I walked the track on Friday. It was already on the better side of a fall in and drying. They had indicated that they were going to put some irrigation on it overnight, but they don't really like using the sprinklers when the rail's true, because where the sprinklers are placed, the rail actually gets in the way of some of the sprinklers, so they usually try and avoid that. So I thought they'll put the minimum on, which is what they did. So I was thinking it would be a significant advantage to be on pace, because Moonee Valley is a bit like a saucer, and even when it's windy at Moonee Valley, for the most part, most of the winds just go straight over top of the horses, and it doesn't really have an impact. Now the one part of the track that's exposed, so there's the grandstands and the winning post, is over that far side where the 1200 metre start is and the 1000 metre chute start. That's a little bit exposed there, and the wind on Saturday come from the north at just the right angles that it was actually tunnelling into that area, and making it really strong. And it was where typically the wind doesn't have an impact at Moonee Valley, it really had an effect on that meeting. So I think that's why we ended up with 3 on-pace winners and 6 off-pace winners. So I'm just looking through them now, the off-pace winners. So Brooklyn Hustle definitely come from last. Behemoth was sort of midfield in a small field. My Pendant was beyond midfield. Exaltara was from the back. Five Kingdom midfield. Shakora sort of midfield come through them. And they're off-pace winners. So they were a bit of a mixture, but it made the track a lot more neutral than I expected. And tempo was really the key factor. If they went too quick, the leaders were gassed by the time they got near the home turn, because they worked hard into that wind. Yeah, right. Yeah. So that was interesting and unusual. It's again results. Absolutely, just another subtle thing that's hard to predict, because you can't just, next time the wind's from the north, you can't just, cheers Paddy, you can't just assume that the same thing will happen, because it really depends on what angle it's getting into that section of the track. So, there we go. So the first thing to discuss, DK, let's start off with race 1. Now, this is a race that I completely cocked up. First of all, the only reason I got involved in the race is because I sort of wanted to take a position against Smarter Lessons. Yes. And I identified advancing. Now, unfortunately, for those that, you would have seen it on racing.com, but my man on track told me it charged on the way to the barrier. Right. When 1,000 metres past the gates at top speed, and never should have run. So he's not really a factor in the race. That's why he's got beaten out of sight, tailed off. The other leader was a 1,000 metre horse, so that makes sense. Smarter Listen was $2.50 to $5, which is sort of something I expected. Yep, and he's just running an even race, and Social Spin was first up and's run okay, right? So that's left the race wide open for Behemoth. Now Behemoth had 3 runs. He was beaten in 2 provincial Adelaide maidens, and then he won a really weak Morpheville maiden, a 1,050 metre maiden, which to me is not a good enough base to come to Melbourne and compete at Saturday Metro level, right? So I probably took a position against that horse too quickly, without going and digging into everything. And when you go back and look at it, you can see he's a big green horse that's got talent, right? Yep. So
that's what I noticed when I went and had a look at his videos after the race. Yeah.
So I talked to Trevor Lawson about it. Trevor gave it 3 lengths and marked it $9. So you had to get very imaginative to get it to where the market did. I marked it 25, so I've made a complete meal of it. But one of the reasons why I kind of do that with horses like that is if they're going into the gates, I've marked the horse 25, and I put, I don't make too many mistakes like that, and they're taking 380. I know who's made the mistake, and it's not them. That's right. So I've got to accept at that point, I've got to make some decisions. I've either just got to cop it sweet, or I can pay a fine, which is what I did. Even though I marked this horse 25, I'll start backing it at 380 to recover some of my stake. I still lost badly on the race, but I recovered some of it. Now the risk in doing that, why I don't sort of you know, like everyone's going to make their own choice whether they want to do that or whatever. Because, for instance, there was a horse like Mishka in the race. He could have won it. I didn't like it, and I knew I hadn't made a mistake with it. But if it wins the race, then the liability gets even worse. You know, so you can make a bad situation worse by doing things like that. But you know, I was convinced that I'd made a very bad error with that horse, and I needed to take some action to mitigate the size of the mistake. So anyway, you had some things to say.
I had some thoughts about it, and it's particularly with because I deal in those sort of types of horses, those lightly raced green horses and things like that. I think the jockey change is really significant, and I think that's one of the reasons why the computer models targeted it as well. They had it so short. So that had nothing against Dom Teneur and Crowther and things like that, but I just think on these horses, and I think we'll talk about it with my pendant as well. When someone like Craig Williams, who's one of the best jockeys in the country, goes on a horse like this, what we called it when we worked at IS for Mark Reed, it's getting a horse to go. You know, getting a horse to go. It reminded me because Jules Valance was speaking about it. I watched it from Sportsbet he's trained up in the same way I was, and he was speaking about Chapada in the lead up to the Derby, and they really liked it, good odds. And one of the reasons I liked it because it was Jay McDonald replacing Pat Maloney. Now Pat's a good honest jockey, but Jay McDonald's again one of the top jockeys in the country, and they just thought at Caulfield he laid in on P Maloney and things like that. So an ideal horse for one of the leading jockeys to get to go, what we call go. And I think that's what's happened with Behemoth. I think it's happened with My Pendant. You know, nothing against what Dee Thornton was doing on it in the bush and things like that. It was laying in a bit. But once Craig got on it, it's been a completely different filly. You know, she's just responded to him and accelerating and things like that. So I just think, and it's something I look for as a positive jockey change, but particularly on horses who are green and lightly raced, they can rapidly improve with that jockey change.
So Keen, fancied in the market, because I think it's. I agree with everything you just said. I think the danger is you just can't take it as a given just because there's a positive rider change. So you've got to sort of look for ones where the jockey, the positive rider's gone on and he's really engaged with that horse. He's switched on.
Something
you can
see you're a big one, like watching them on the way to the gates, and you hate them going around just lazily with the Clark or something like that. You know, and those good jockeys, I reckon they do get a good feel from the warm-up, especially if they haven't ridden them before. Like in My Pendant's case, Craig had the ride on it at Sandown, so probably got a really. That's another thing I like. I like jockey's second ride. You know, because they've had that feel on the horse. You know, then now they get to know it. So
at the risk of sounding a bit nuts, people probably think I am a bit, but you can see from the minute they come out of the gates, and you can see on the way to the gates on Behemoth, there was electricity between Craig and that horse. He was really enthusiastic about winning that race. He got every bit out of that horse, you know what I mean? And it was the same on My Pendant at Sandown and again on Saturday. So when he's really tuned into horse, and his ride on Al Galale was like, well, honestly, I mean, that was extraordinary, and he's done the punters a huge favour there because it was only his ride that stopped Pat Gary's horse really upset.
Captain Red. So no, it's one thing I'm big on, mate. But I think there's a good lesson there.
Absolutely. So then the other race I sort of wanted to talk through, DK, just to sort of take a few snapshots in time over the period between when the fields come out and then when they jump. Let's the Al Luca race, right?
Al Luca, Al Luca, heavily backed Al Luca. Yeah, you liked it.
So I did the form for that race on Thursday. So my first cut. Just do it. And I thought, no pressure in this race. It's got holds all the aces. We're just talking about change of tempos and things that work. It come from a 1200 metre race at Moonee Valley where it went very fast for the first 1000 metres and just held on nicely over the last 200. There's almost no chance it's not going to run a really fast 1000 metres here when it's the leader and there's no pressure. And so I marked at 280 in my first cut, and marked. Invincible Al second pick 460. Go to the market. Al Luca's $5, or it might have been $1,550 at that stage, and Invincible Al's $320. I think, I missed something here. And Invincible Al's Nathan Punch and Al Luca's Steph Thornton, but Steph Thornton at Moonee Valley.
Moonee Valley, so that's good.
It's a big tick there. Well, maybe I need to soften this a bit, but I'm not sure that I do. You know, so I actually started backing Al Luca, and then on Friday I sent it out to my subscribers, and I just sort of blended my prices with the market a bit. Went $3.40 Al Luca, $4 Invincible Al, and said take the 480 Al Luca. And then after scratchings, it was still 420, so I thought there's no reason to change my price and make it more aggressive, it's okay. Well, you get to the race, and leaders aren't exactly advantaged because of the wind and everything else, but in that race they were, but generally they weren't. The models have hammered this horse into 220s.
220, that's it, yeah. For leaders, they're the ones they find, they target, they're going to do it, they'll do it on a leader.
Yeah. So you just, honestly, it was just hard to imagine when I first looked at the market, and I don't even know if it was second pick, it might have been third pick when I first looked at the market. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to get it through to your head, but even though you can see these things, at least two of the big teams were going to really like it. So I could see a way it could get back into sort of equal favourite or something. That's what I was thinking. It might come into equal favourite with Invincible Al. It was very hard to imagine it running 5-4. So then that's just a real interesting thing. Now, the reason I wanted to sort of discuss it, because it was a little bit the same in the last race. Serious Suspect had a lot of the same attributes, and the other main chance in the race, Demolition, was going to be at the back. And initially it was a big field. Now in the end there were more scratchings than there were runners, so we didn't have a big field. And the horses that occupied the front four positions in that race, it was the last race on the card, took up over 60% of the market, and they ran the last four in total. So I think that indicates that the jockeys just completely copped it up, right? They went way too quick, unnecessarily. Let's not pot young Lockie King, because he's riding really, really well, but I don't know what he was thinking on Prezado there. That was just a bit
that was
unnecessary. But anyway, so that's just a race that's inverted. But from a betting point of view, to me there was similarities there, you know what I mean? The only difference was Serious Suspect was coming from Flemington, whereas Al Luca was coming from Moonee Valley. So, two situations that can look quite similar, but they have a different outcome both in the... I mean, Serious Suspect still did go around the best backed horse, I suppose, even though it was a bit soft late. And the other race I just wanted to talk a bit about the betting was just the models don't always get it right. So in the Five Kingdom race...
Oh, wasn't that? I gather you don't have any issues with the benchmark 64 on a Saturday pod?
No, I don't mind it.
Well, it's just the extra race. It's the extra race, isn't it? It's the extra restricted race or whatever it is.
So if
there's a few of the purists where we don't like it, but...
I can understand, but you have to do well in those races, you have to know the horses well, so you have to be betting on them at the
provincials and things like that,
midweeks or whatever.
So it's another race you've got to find the winner.
And more often than not, you'll do the race and then it'll be a very bunched range of ratings and prices, and then they can be difficult races where the best ride sort of wins. But occasionally you'll get a good up-and-comer there that sort of stands out. So in this case, that was Five Kingdom. He stood out to me in this race, and he was very easy to mark favourite. But because he'd sort of never run really big figures, or I'm not quite sure what the reason is, but he wasn't, and he didn't map brilliantly. He mapped sort of okay if everything worked out well. Lockie King riding, and he rode it beautifully. He actually drifted from his Friday price, and I expected him to firm, so I wasn't right with the betting, but. So in the end, I think the models didn't identify him, and that just shows you they don't get everything.
Don't get it right, and and that's when you get a premium. You get a bonus in getting paid.
That's it.
Doesn't mean that. So they don't get it all right all the time, but good mate.
No,
Chelsea. Wasn't much else there, was there?
No, that'll do us, I think. Or something else I was going to say. Oh, we touched on Exultara before, so...
Exultara, yeah.
Exultara,
back to her 5 times in May. It was one where I really butted up in maidens and butted up, and then she ended up winning one at 6-4 or something, I've tried back to her good odds plenty of times, and now she's won since at $17, $8 and $12. She had the rider change there. She had Luke Curry going on for, which was a tick for mine, just what I look for, Can't see why it happened.
I think she's needing circumstances to fall for her.
She's got a finish on her. She's got a finish on her, and she can lay in a bit. So I thought,
But I'll be looking for horses out of that race that Mastering won
at Kilmore.
Yeah, even though he won by a big margin.
It obviously sets them, even though it wasn't big tempo, it sets them up to improve off.
Yeah. And just one final thing, we'll just talk about the win there, DK, because I looked at my sheet there and it reminded me of it. So. I had bet in a couple of races at, I only bet in one race at Warrnambool yesterday, but good man, Graham Hoy, walks the track down there, puts it out on Twitter, for everyone.
Certainly does.
He knows, great report. He knows exactly what he's talking about. So the track was even, but there were 9 races there yesterday and 9 run-on winners out wide, and it was all because of the wind. So it just so happened that there was a 55 to 70 kilometre westerly that completely decimated the leaders and horses racing on the road. It just goes to show you how subtle and fragile this game is, and there's a tipping point where the advantage goes to one group of horses, and it's very hard to overturn it. So anyway, there we go. There's the show. We're going to go and have some lunch. Thanks, punters. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll be back sometime soon.
Race free Monday, more sooner than not, I'd say. Race free Monday.
You bet. Cheers, punters.